Hello everyone. Today's recording is a demonstration of using color palettes and adjusting basic color settings in Adobe Illustrator. So first I'd like to start by just discussing the basic color model that we use in Illustrator and then laying out the palettes and the different options available. You can see how useful color is in Illustrator itself. So first things first, under the Edit menu, let's look at the color settings, which is bottom of the menu on the Edit menu. And let's take a quick look at that. Right here it tells us a couple things we want to know. It's telling us that our working space right now is RGB, sRGB, IEC, 6.1, blah blah blah. And then CMYK, it tells us, is US web coded swap, etc. Yeah, these sound a little more complicated than they really are. What it's basically telling you is that when you're using color, it's going to use these computer standards for setting up color. There is a more in-depth thing that can be done to coordinate your color and make sure that it matches high standards. Typically, what we do is switch the RGB model to Adobe RGB 1998. That's just coordinating our RGB color system across all of our Adobe software. CMYK, for our purposes, we can leave that alone. This is just a typical standard print color setting, and I'm just going to click OK. By the way, these settings are in every other Adobe program, and so it's a good idea to have these match one another between Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, etc. Now by default, if you look up in the top corner, you can see that our Illustrator document is already set to CMYK color. Usually Illustrator documents are set up to be ready for print, and that's the case here. It is possible to change your color and make it, RGB dominant. That can be done under the File menu. And this is where you can select your document color mode, either CMYK or RGB. Visually speaking, when you're working on your computer, you won't really notice much of a difference. But it does change the way that your color separations or your color output would be used when you're ready to save and send your file somewhere. Most of the time, it's best just to leave it on the default CMYK. Unless you're working in a purely video or online environment where you need to make sure that everything you do is RGB color. Alright, so that's just a rundown of the basic settings and the color profiles assigned. Now let's open up some palettes. If we're going to go to the window menu, Illustrator has not dozens, but lots of color palettes available, and they all do a little bit different things. So let's take a look. First, we're going to go to the window menu and we're going to open the color palette. I'm going to go ahead and detach it from the side so it's visible. I'm also going to go ahead and open the color guide. Detach that one too so it stays open. Also going to open color themes. Let that one sit over here on the side too. And I'm going to open swatches. Now the first comment I want to make is that the swatches are the default colors, and frankly they're very limited. But if you're not very curious and you don't try very hard, sometimes you just stick with whatever's there in the swatch palette and you don't really explore and develop more complicated or interesting color. So what I like to encourage students to do is to expand your horizons and look for color inspiration. You want to make sure that when you're using color, it's being used effectively and artistically, and just limiting your choices to the couple dozen colors in the swatch palette isn't going to do it for you, especially if you're trying to create something unique and original, or even if you're doing something like a logo. You're not going to want to limit yourself to just the colors available here in the palette. So let's pick on the color palette first. Now, when you open the color palette, it may look like this. just a simple color bar with a CMYK spectrum and a couple swatches. If you want to expand it, you double click the word color on the tab. That'll collapse it, then it'll expand it. And you can see that it's showing us the percentages for the color of the swatch. So right now the white swatch is selected, so it's showing me that there's no color value here. Let me go ahead and draw a shape here on the page and then select a new color swatch. And you'll see that it is now modified, and it displays that that green is actually 90% cyan, 30% magenta, 95% yellow, 30% black. And depending on whatever color swatch you select, this color palette is going to tell you the exact measurement of that color. And that's really useful for manually controlling color and making sure that you're using the correct color in any different situation. You can create custom color right here on the little color bar, and if you stretch it out, you can give yourself a little more space to select more customized color. And if you want to save one of those colors, like let's say you make some new fancy color, you're like, hey, I want to keep that. What you do is you go back to the swatch palette and you click the little new swatch button. Looks like a little piece of paper. Click that puppy. It's going to say, hey, is this a new swatch? Do you want it? What is it about? Is it a process color? Yes. This is the color readout. And then you just click OK. And then that puppy is there. So click OK, and bam, that swatch is now added into your library as a little color swatch that you can save and reuse. Okay, so also, let's see. Let's look at the color guide and what that does. What's really interesting about the color guide is it gives you your dominant swatch. Here it is. And then it predicts and creates color harmonies for you. So if you click on that swatch, that's the main dominant color, and then you click on the drop-down menu, you'll see that it creates other color combinations based on traditional color harmonies. So like a left complement, a triad, high contrast, typical artistic color harmonies that you might use and are meant to be coordinated with one another. And if you want to save that, click the little plus button down at the bottom of the color guide. And there you have your little color settings, your color swatches. That little color group is there available for you to use on other artwork. And again, these are colors that, based on color harmony rules, will go well together. So sometimes when developing color and picking colors for products and for artwork, once I get one swatch identified, then it's a little easier to kind of set up and pick other color harmonies based on that initial swatch. And that's one of the useful tools, that color guide, that for one reason or another is only available in Illustrator. I'm not quite sure why, but that's where it is. Now let's go over to color themes. Now color themes is probably my favorite color tool that's available. And what it does is it connects to the Creative Cloud account, where you can store a library of your favorite color swatches in your own library, and then that library becomes accessible on any Adobe software you use. And those will be saved under the My Themes area. So if you had some saved themes that you, color themes, swatches that you like using, maybe you created it in Photoshop and you want to share it and use it in Illustrator, you can store it in My Themes under your Creative Cloud account, and then those color swatches are available anywhere. It also synchronizes with your Adobe apps if you're using your phone or your iPad, so that's really useful. The other thing you can do, which is kind of cool, is you can explore. If you click the Explore tab, what you're going to do is you're going to connect to online color swatches. And these are shared swatches from other users, and they're voted on by most popular, or they have different categories you can pick from. And you can see what other color swatches, color themes people are using. And if you want to keep one, like let's say, hey, I like this one, I'm going to add it to my swatches. And then you could look over on the swatch palette and you'll see that it's added there to your list of available colors. Nice, cool way to search and be inspired and find other color. Last but not least, in the Adobe Color Themes area, this little palette, it does have a color wheel where you can use basic color harmony to create your own swatches. If you look at this little color rule tab, click on that, you can pick one of the common color harmonies, like complementary, let's say. And then if you spin the wheel and turn the swatches, it's going to help you manually create a color set based on those different color settings. And you can manually create one, save it, store it in your themes, share it, or add it to your swatches. So that's another way to use that color system, is just use that color themes palette. And like I said, that's one of my favorite ways to do it. It's a way you can kind of explore and have a little fun creating color and then reusing it throughout your work. Another quick and easy way to change a color is to select your object and then double click the fill box over on the toolbar. That gives you the traditional color picker, which you could use. This is really helpful if you're looking to identify the specific color. Like here it says it shows the full CMYK value, it shows the corresponding RGB value of that color, and it also shows you the hexadecimal color down here, which is web-based color. So that way you can coordinate your artwork. Good way to pick out and find out exactly what the color is, so that so it can be calibrated depending on where you're using it. And if you move a slider, you're reorienting that color and create a new swatch, and then it gets added to the object on your page. One more thing I'm going to mention is up at the top under the Edit menu, there also are some additional tools which you can find under the Edit Colors submenu. We won't go through all of them right now, but just know that there are a lot of choices here. This is similar to maybe Photoshop color modes, where let's say you need to convert things to black and white, or maybe you have an existing artwork that's RGB, you got to convert it to CMYK, something like that. But there's also this handy little thing called Recolor Artwork, and it's a very powerful tool. So I've selected my objects, and now under the Edit menu I'm going to Edit Colors and select Recolor Artwork, and then here we go. We get this new dialog box that pops up, and it's really handy because what it does is it links to your existing color groups that are stored in your swatch palette, and then it identifies all the available color that was used in the currently selected object. So here it has the green, the red, and then that black, which was the stroke color, it looks like. And basically you can pick these and manually change them, and then it will update your artwork on the fly. So imagine I had a piece of art that had dozens of colors throughout the whole complex drawing, and I could look here at a list of available colors and then just change them all at once, without having to go in and hunt and peck and click. Each little object changes color one at a time. I could do it on a macro level right here on this color list. Also, you can take these color groups and apply them to your artwork as well, so that you can force Illustrator to recolor your art all at once. Another way you can use this Recolor palette is to click on the Edit tab, and then this little color wheel allows you to move the color, and these little circles represent the colors that are visible in your artwork. And there again, you can just visually move them around the color wheel and pick the new color you want to apply to the artwork. It's another really handy tool for adjusting color without having to go back with your selection tools and one by one recolor and realign and reassign swatches. Kind of a pain in the butt. So using that recolor tool is really helpful. I think what I'll do is go ahead and pull up a piece of art that I've worked on recently, and let's see if I can show you how that recolor might work on something more complex. Yeah, here we go. So I have these vector drawings, these portraits I've been working on. And you see here that I've been testing out different color schemes. Well, if I select all of that artwork, oh, I think I've got it locked. Sorry about that. Hold on a second. There we go. So let's say I go and I grab this piece of art right now, and I go to that Edit, and I go to Recolor Art. See, there you go. It's listing all the colors that were used in that artwork. Okay. Well, let's say I go to the Edit menu here and I get that color wheel. Look at, dozens of colors in that picture. I'm going to click this little chain icon. Okay, so that locks them in place. And then watch what happens when I slide the wheel. It just manually reassigns new color to that art. So I got to tell you, that's way better than trying to go through and take some piece of complex art and reassign new colors. And I like doing that especially to test out different color options so that you can kind of compare and say, okay, I like this, I want to try it like this, see how it's a little better, a little different. So that's the basic rundown of the basic color palettes you can use, how to set up swatches, how to use those color palettes to your advantage. Go ahead, give them a try, and hopefully that will help you make more colorful and interesting artwork. All right, talk to you next time.